Alrighty, hello everybody. This is Mama Bell from Shalom Pod at Healing Throughout. We are doing another podcast this afternoon with a wonderful friend and brother in the Messiah, Dr. Alphonso Munzo III. He is a naturopath doctor based in Ohio with a clinic called Balanced Life Clinic. I've known Dr. Alphonso for say about a year, referred to by a really great friend and sister of ours from the Messiah. And I love his approach to holistic medicine. I love the fact that he is a brother in the Messiah, so he understands the Torah. He understands how to move within the Ruach and implement all those beautiful spiritual advantages that we have as believers into naturopath medicine. So I want to say thank you very much, Alphonso, for joining me this afternoon on Shalom Pod. And I would love to get started in discussing with you some of the things that brought you into holistic health, your walk with the Messiah, and so on and so forth. So Shalom, Alphonso. Great to have you here this afternoon.
Shalom. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're
Great
very welcome.
Here.
Let's get started with asking you about a little bit about your background and how you got involved in natural medicine or healthcare.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I have a very interesting background. It was kind of long. So I actually originally started out in electrical engineering, and I did that for 2 years and got a diploma. And I was going to go off to DeVry and do computer engineering and electrical engineering and stuff. And I decided not to. And I thought I had a calling into the ministry, so instead I went to a Christian college that was also a seminary, and I did my 4 years in biblical studies, Christian ministries, all that kind of thing. But while I was there, it was basically, I think my first year, I got sick, and I got ulcerative colitis, which is like ulcers in the colon. It's just pretty bad. And I was bleeding internally, and I had to go home, and I saw the doctors, and they really didn't have much for me, and they put me on drugs and stuff, and the drugs really weren't working. So eventually they said, well, the only thing that's really left for you to do is to have surgery and have most of your colon cut out. And I thought, this doesn't sound like a good way to do it. Something just didn't seem right with me with that. So I started looking into natural medicine, and at the time there was a doctor here in Ohio by the name of Dr. Barron, and I went to see him. He was recommended, and he was like 92 or 3 years old. He looked like he was 70, and he'd been doing this almost his whole life. He came here from Germany, and he wasn't very well esteemed because he was in the natural health field, and at that time it was really looked down upon because modern medicine was the thing during his time. And within probably a year or 2 years, I was back to normal health. So I continued my education, except I decided to pick up a biology minor, which was basically kind of like a pre-med course, thinking that eventually I would get into natural medicine, or that would be my actual ministry. So I actually did continue both fields, and I finished my Master's of Divinity, and I also went on and finished like pre-med stuff and decided to become a naturopathic doctor. So that's kind of how I got to where I am now.
Very cool. It's really interesting how people who have dealt with health challenges end up going into the health and wellness field, whether they choose to be consultants maybe for a product and or like in your case choosing to get a degree and go into naturopath medicine because you have a story to share with your clients, with your patient, about how you're able to take care of this simple situation or health challenge in your life and use the means that the Father's brought into your life to aid you and to help you on a holistic note. Would you agree?
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
Well, tell our audience here a little bit about what a naturopath doctor does, and maybe in your case specifics, because I know you deal a little bit differently than the naturopath doctors and holistic health and wellness clinics that I've been through. My husband has given you the stamp of approval regarding my program. So tell us a little bit about what a naturopath doctor does, and in your case, how you may be different from the regular ones that are on, that are in the industry.
Sure. So, because this is a term that it depends on where you live. You're more out towards the West Coast, so some people out there may be more familiar with a naturopathic doctor. I'm more over here on the East Coast, and when I usually say that, most people just give me a blank stare, and they're like, well, what is that? They don't have a clue. So a naturopathic doctor is very similar to a medical doctor, usually depending on training. Normally, you still have pre-med type training, and you learn all the same anatomy, physiology, cell biology, chemistry, all that stuff. And then when you actually get into the medical part, it's a lot different because a naturopath studies all the different natural ways of healing. So instead of spending a lot of hours doing drugs and surgery training and learning pharmacology, we're learning herbs and diet and nutrition and light therapies and sun therapy and water therapy, some body therapies. Many naturopaths learn some type of massage. I wouldn't really say manipulation like a chiropractor because that's usually more based for chiropractors, but there's usually some kind of body work, sometimes maybe energy work. So it's a pretty broad field. It's basically specializing in anything that's natural that can bring about healing. So then what happens is you usually have naturopaths who have their own specialties. And that's where I'm a little bit different. My specialty happens to be biophysics. Because of my background, having 2 years in electrical engineering, when I was first introduced to natural medicine and I was going through my own healing process, I was really fascinated with a lot of the energy-based medicines like acupuncture and these other methods, and I thought it was intriguing. And I did a lot of research into that at the time because I was going to Grace College. When I was at the school, there was a lot of people who weren't sure about what I was doing because, from a believer standpoint, whether you're Torah-based or, mainstream Christian, you kind of look at a lot of these things like they're Eastern and they're New Age and, acupuncture, maybe you should stay away from that kind of stuff. So I started studying that, and I realized that a lot of the principles I learned in electrical engineering were similar to how the body worked. And then I also found that a lot of these principles were actually more biblical than what we find in modern medicine because it was more holistic, meaning it's looking at the whole person, the body, the spirit, the soul, and how those things aren't compartmentalized like we think they are, how they really relate to everything. And you see a lot of that in Chinese medicine. You see a lot of that in the Bible too. So because of my fascination, I was always interested in studying more of the energy side of how the body works. So then that's how I kind of got into biophysics, and my specialty as a naturopath is working with electromagnetic fields and how the body works as an electromagnetic system, and that's really kind of my specialty.
Yeah, and the beauty too is that because you know the Messiah and because you understand the spiritual part of our bodies and our walk, to fuse those two together to make a complete whole package is a really beautiful thing. Now, I know you and I have worked together a little bit with my health challenges. I've been seeing Alphonso for probably the past year. I think I'm on my second or third dose of homeopathics, which actually I love your homeopathics. Of all the things you have, the homeopathics I really seem to kind of be drawn to. The supplements that you put us on are good because you do test specifically for what the body needs. But those homeopathics are really a whole different animal. Now, in your clinical studies and how you work with your patients, you do something a little bit different in your testing. Can you share a little bit about the testing that you do that is not of the norm, blood work and saliva and urine testing that you do at a conventional and or even at a holistic wellness center? You do a certain kind of testing that specifically gets down to the DNA and then to our makeup as people, so that you can actually put us on a program that's catered specifically for each person. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So this is where it could be really detailed and technical, and I'll try to make it simple. So it's the field of biophysics. So that's the study of the energy systems of the body. And people have probably heard of energy or frequency medicine, and I think everyone should be familiar with the concept that everything that exists has its own frequency. Now, I should say on a technical side, it's not that we measure frequencies for everything, because some things are measured by wavelength and some things are measured by frequency. but we can do the mathematical formula and figure out the frequency. So everything does have, I call it an energetic fingerprint. It's like a substance specific frequency that's specific to that substance that identifies it like a fingerprint.
So would you say it's very close to your specific DNA that each person has its individual, like a fingerprint?
Yes. Okay. And every substance on this planet has that. And another way I can often compare this to is for those who understand Torah and stuff, we have this word called Shem in the Bible, and Shem is the word for name. And we say names are important, names are nice. Nice is an acronym. So in Hebrew, and this works for any language, but specifically in Hebrew, when you're looking at a name, the acronym NICE is the best way to think of it. And that stands for nature, identity, character, and essence. So the name of something is its nature, its identity, its character, and essence. At least that's what it should be. And a lot of times you see in the scriptures people have their names changed because their nature, their identity, their character was changed. And it's very similar. A frequency and a name's very similar because it carries that identifying fingerprint of that substance. So with our testing, why it's different is I use a device called the Quest 4, and it was invented in Europe. Most of these devices are. And it's a combination of electrodermal screening, biofeedback, and basically frequency testing. So I can test a person if they're physically present. They can hold on to electrodes, and I can test them. And if they're not physically in my office, we can do a DNA test. But it's not like a normal blood DNA test because this test is actually scanning your DNA and testing via frequencies. So since every organ in your body and every tissue has its own frequency, we can test that and measure whether or not it's in a healthy range or an unhealthy range. And as well, every chemical or parasite or nutrient has its own frequency. So we can scan the body and find out what's in the body, what's not in the body, what's affecting it, what's the major causes of disease, or I should say dysfunction that's affecting the body. And then, as you were saying, one of the unique things I do is I make frequency imprinted liquids, which are very similar to homeopathics. They're slightly different in that these drops are specifically made for the individual, and they're programmed with frequencies based on the testing for the person. And that's just something you get in biophysics. Just to explain it real quickly, most people will probably maybe have heard that there's two different types of wave interference patterns. So if you can picture two frequency waves, and you can think of a sound wave, and if you had two waves that are exactly the same frequency and everything, and they hit each other, it amplifies, which means it makes the signal louder or bigger or stronger. So two of the exact same frequencies, when they hit each other, or waves you should say, they amplify. Now, if you take a wave and you take the exact same frequency and you flip it, they would call it like 180 degrees. So it basically looks like it's upside down. When those two waves hit each other, they cancel themselves out. And this is how we make noise cancellation technology, and how a lot of professional audio and whether they're in music or videos, if they need to make something louder, a lot of times they would just bounce the same wave off of itself. And if they need to cancel out the sound, they invert it and send that inverted wave at the other wave, and then that cancels out the sound. So we do the same thing with the body. If there are things in the body that we do not want, like parasites or toxins, we give you the inverted frequency of that parasite or toxin, and your body will kick it out. If it's a tissue and we need to strengthen it, we give you the exact frequency of that tissue, and then that amplifies and allows the body to become stronger. Now, the other way to understand it is the energy systems of the body, they do exist, and they've been measured for over 70 years now. So it's not like it's some crazy New Age thing out there. We've been measuring energy fields and pathways in the body for 70 years, and mainly out of Europe, but they've even used radioactive isotopes to trace pathways through the body. And these are energy pathways, so by the naked eye you wouldn't see them, but they do carry information throughout the body, and that's what the energy systems of the body are. They're information. So you think of them as the software of the body. So when you give someone frequency imprinted drops that are specific to them, they're giving their body the proper software to run the hardware again. Because a lot of times the software is what gets corrupted, and then that's why your hardware, which is the physical body, isn't working correctly.
I have to say that I really, and I should have called them frequency drops, correct? Imprints? Is that the correct way of saying what these are, not homeopathics?
Yeah, I prefer to say that just because the homeopathic is slightly different, because it's still basically a frequency of a substance, but usually it's a specific substance that you're using. And the classical homeopathy is well established, and they have their own remedies, and it's different because it's not as specific for the body as testing you.
Yeah, they're real cool, because when I get my little box of goodies from Alphonso, it comes like in this stainless steel. No, I'm just kidding. It comes in this stainless steel container, all wrapped. Actually, it's wrapped in foil, and he wraps the frequency drops in the foil, and they put them inside another foil-looking envelope container. And I have mine stored in my room, as he had suggested. They're actually, I have a buckwheat bed with actual wood. That's the actual frame that my husband made. And so I have the frequency drops. They're wrapped still in the foil in between the buckwheat and the frame, right on my bed with the covers over them, because I want them to be in the dark. You treat them as a homeopathic, but these are specifically catered to your specific needs down to the DNA. And that's one thing that really intrigued my husband, because I've been through a lot of different people regarding health challenges throughout the year, because you just go through journeys in life where things shift and change, and stresses of life, whether it's environmental or emotional. My husband has been with me through my health journey, and out of all the people that we've seen, and we've seen some quote Christian people in the wellness clinics and such, but he stamps approval hands down with Alphonso and how he specifically treats and caters specifically for the person, and how his testing. I'm just going off on a tangent here real quick. I've done testing with Alphonso in the past, and I was going through I won't go into too much detail. We'll say that maybe for another show, but I was going through some stuff in my life, and I went through it, and this test that Alphonso's talking about, which we'll get into more details here in just a second, picked it up like no tomorrow. It was spot on when he picked up, and when I got my results, I was like, what? And I have to really admit, there's times I'm a little skeptical of how he formulates his stuff and how the testing, because I'm doing a long distance testing with him. I actually don't go into his office because he's based in Ohio, and he'll give out information here in a minute regarding the clinic and how to contact him specifically. So I'm doing everything from a long distance, and so in my case, I send him my saliva, my urine, my nails, and my hair clippings to him, little plastic baggies. I send that off, and that's how he tests me specifically. If I ever visit Ohio, I would love to go to the testing where he actually does it at the clinic, but he does work with people outside of the state. But man, you were spot on with a couple times over. My husband and I kind of like took a seat back, because he consults with us on a Skype conversation so that he can take out his time. And Alphonso is such a great brother, and he really takes out his time for his people. He doesn't just charge $1,000 per hour kind of a thing and then see you later kind of a deal. This guy really takes the time out as a brother to meet with people, to consult with them regarding the program. He's been very kind, and the Father's given us favor with him in our relationship as family, and also with clinical help for me. So he is worth everything in gold. What he's discussing with us right now is just a jewel of a nugget in the Hebraic Messianic per se family, if you want to call it that, or the way, as I call it. And, don't block it off as being a bunch of guru, funky, new agey stuff. This guy is spot on. He loves the Father. He's got a tight walk. He knows his stuff. And so we're just going to kind of jump on in on that note. Let's talk a little bit about the Aleph-Tav body system and why that, and what is that, obviously, and why it is so important with your clinical diagnosis here.
Yes, that's another thing that sets me apart. It's funny that you say that because typically when people come in, a lot of times people fill out health forms and everything, and, I'm looking at that as I'm testing. But I've had a few people who would come in and say, we're not giving you any information. We want you to tell us everything. It's like, okay, well, it's not really the way it works. But so a lot of people will call this my psychic computer. And they're like, it's better than a psychic because it's right on and because it's a computer. And I honestly, I probably looked, I knew this technology existed. We have the advancement. In fact, our technology today is so advanced that there's devices out there that we could have on the market that we don't just because people aren't ready for it. Basically like Star Trek.
Wow.
I mean, we could literally probably scan the body like a laser and treat it with a laser. And the only reason why it's not happening yet is people aren't ready for it. But I looked probably for 7 years for a device that was this accurate because there's a lot of energetic frequency-based type testing devices out there. But I wanted one that was going to be consistent and duplicatable and just spot on. And it blows my mind sometimes what we find. And, people sometimes get limited on what they think we can scan. I mean, if it has a frequency, we can scan it. So not just chemicals and body and tissue and organs, but emotions. I mean, we can really test just about everything. And we really have to look at the whole picture because you never know what it is that's really causing the body not to function correctly. But a lot of people I would say underestimate this. Most of naturopathic medicine or modern medicine, most medicine out there in general, whether you're doing it natural or modern, primarily looks at the body from a chemical model, which is fine. But eventually someone has to ask the question, well, what makes up the chemistry? And what gives the chemistry the information on how to function correctly? And that's the informational system of the body. So you will find a lot of times people don't have to take tons of supplements. A lot of times they just need the proper software so that their body utilizes the supplements or the nutrients that they're already getting in their body. So a lot of times I don't typically put people on a lot of supplements because if you give them the correct software, their body really takes care of most of the problems automatically, and then you just have to give them a few things to support the body that that you obviously need, nutrients, and some things your body can make, but some things you have to get from diet.
Right.
Now the Aleph-Tav body system comes in primarily. I'm trying to think how to best describe this. So if I use a description from my book that I'm writing, I called it the Aleph-Tav body is an electromagnetic telecommunication system of the body that is made up of the basic building blocks of all of creation, which is the Hebrew letters. And these Hebrew letter command centers control all functions of the body for basically proper function, shape, and form. So to say that in a more simple way to understand it, there are master control points on the body that are energetic points. So these are energy command centers on the body. And their whole function is to send information throughout the body so the body is functioning correctly. Now, those command centers happen to line up with the Hebrew alphabet. There's actually one command point for each Hebrew letter. Now, how I got into this is, like I said, I was into energetic medicine, and I was really deciding early on whether or not I wanted to become a chiropractor or a naturopath. And high on the list was a doctor in Chinese medicine. And what happened is very early on, when I was doing my pre-med studies and studying massage therapy, I got introduced to a therapy that came out of Japan that was just a light laying on of hands. I was told that it was like acupuncture except without needles. So I looked into this. And there's 2 institutes in our country teaching this. One's called Jinsen Jitsu, one's called TKM, the King Institute Method. And I trained with both of them for, many years now, probably 12, 13 years. And I found that this system was absolutely fascinating. So I didn't go into Chinese medicine. I went to become a naturopathic doctor and to use this method because I found that it just ran circles around everything else. And when I was in Texas finishing my ND and I was doing a internship at the King Institute, I learned about the Hebrew roots of the faith, or you could call it the why Torah was so important. I call it, a follower of the way. And I started keeping Torah. And as soon as I did that, I realized that the system I was working with was based off of Hebrew. Wow. And I did research, and sure enough, I found out that it was Hebrew tribes that actually brought this information originally to Japan. And then there was a man in Japan with the last name of Morai, Yaro Morai, who actually rediscovered this lost art. He started teaching it, and then his pupils brought it to the United States. So what I have done is I picked up basically where everyone else has left off, and I'm trying to restore this system back to its original Hebrew understanding. So basically the Aleph-Tav body is the foundational system of the body that controls all the software. It's where the buck stops. So if you can fix that system, you can fix everything else.
Amen. No, I was going to say, it's the hardware of the Father being programmed back into his people. And it's
that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, just like you talked about, the frequency drops need to be implemented in people via your program, because you're putting the hardwire back inside, right, to fix everything up, and everything else kind of like fixes on its own. I'm blown. I know we've known you for some time, but I sit back and I'm like, my tongue is hanging out of my mouth going, oh my gosh, it's like so cool. Because the Father drew you into naturopath medicine, right? You're studying. Yep. You go to a thing in Texas. He's like guiding you as you go along, teaching you about the Hebraic roots. You go and figure it out. It's like a no-brainer. Jump into Torah. Now you're taking all that you've learned, plus you're following the Father based on his word cover to cover. And you are now, that is just that's like the Father's hand picking you out of the planet going, doing, you need to be picked out here, Alphonso. I'm going to start to use you to implement this whole new way of lifestyle, not just in following my word in the Torah, but allowing people to realize that I am the Alpha and the top, and I've created people. They are part of my tribe if they choose to want to be, but they just need to be called out to come. And they all have the Alpha and the top implemented within their DNA. I keep on saying implement. I don't know why the Father's saying to say that, but maybe it's the best choice of words here. But he created us out of his image. We already have his Hebraic DNA floating through our systems, whether we realize it or not, people. So if you don't know him, realize that you are to know him, because you have the same wiring system that Alphonso and I have, that we do have. We do know who he is. We've called his name. We are his children. We have the same DNA coding when it comes to from a spiritual sense from his creative, handwritten mark on our heart. You just have to choose to want to come and be called out to be his child. So that is that's like mind blowing, because that blows all natural medicine to the sidewalk basically, because if you don't have the imprint, see, this is a whole other conversation, my friend. We need to go get a little deeper with this some other time, but that is so huge. You have the not the DNA that you're working on a physical level with people, okay? Because for instance, just on a side note here, because I can get on a rabbit trail a little bit too much, but just because on my brain right now, for someone coming in that's doing conventional medicine, say they have colitis, okay, they're seeing the doctor, they're doing all the blood work, all the scanning, whatever, do MRIs or whatever you do for that issue in your life, and they hear about you, okay, you're not going to do the typical conventional medicine that they're doing. They're doing a whole different animal. So someone coming in that's green, know nothing about what you do, and they're because they're stuck in the conventional part of their health, journey to be well. how do they switch over to something like this? You're getting probably people that are Torah-minded, Christians, the ones that don't even know him. How do they even switch over from it's kind of like, eating non-organic conventional to eating organic. You realize, oh my gosh, that's doing me bad. I better try the organic stuff. Oh, I'm hooked. How do I, where do I get this stuff? How do I get it? How do I get to a farm or a co-op or whatever? How do you do with people like that? They go from one extreme and still feeling you and I talked about this. I'm like, Alphonso, I need to get blood work. You're like, no, you don't, Adrian. Trust me. I'm like, okay, you're good. Because I know you will lead people to go to medical if they need to. I know you're not ignorant of saying, well, you can go to the doctor right now.
Correct.
I'm stuck. So you're not going, oh, trust me all the time, and this is the only way. You have wisdom and discernment from the Father. Realize that they need to go see medical people. They need to go. But how do you deal with people that are coming from a whole different level of medical brain, whatever deal, to seeing you? How do you start them up on something they know nothing about what you're doing? Quickly.
Yeah, it's always interesting because typically the main thing I see over the last couple of years has been the most difficult cases. I typically get people who have been everywhere, tried everything, nothing works. So they're coming to me for the last effort.
Yeah.
I'm dying, can you fix me? Kind of stuff. So then you have to take that, and there's a lot of education because typically, and a lot of it is the person, when I sit especially if they're sitting in front of me, I get a feeling of spiritually where they are at, what they believe. If I can tell if they're looking at me and they think I have 3 heads, and they just think what I'm saying is absolutely insane. And you just kind of have to go with where the person are. Sometimes there's people that come in your office and you instantly connect with them, and they just soak up everything you're saying.
Yeah.
And other people, you kind of just have to slowly give them a little bit at a time and try to explain it to them, this is a different perspective, we're treating it a little bit different. And most of the time, if they're willing to at least try it, it usually doesn't take them long to say, man, I can't believe I'm feeling so much better. Something's, maybe the problem's not completely gone, but I'm feeling better. It's I don't know what these things are or how you do this, but it's working. And at least that is the best way to do it, because at least that opens them up to learning more. And it's just a large step for them or a learning process for them to learn why what I do is so much different and why it works. Because the first thing people assume is, well, this is, some weird new age thing and there's no science behind it. But the reality is there's all kinds of science behind it. And the more we're studying physics today, we have all these different physics out there, quantum physics and string theory and all these things. But the more they're all being studied, the more they continue to prove what the Scripture says. And when you look at the Aleph-Tav body, it's basically the story of creation. The energy systems of the body is what connects the spirit to the physical. So, of course, when he breathes the breath of life into us, that is really a energetic system. It really is. A breath and light is basically what it is. And the breath and light goes into the body, and then it starts manifesting, and it starts creating all these energy fields, and then those energy fields start manifesting until you get a physical body. So that's what's so cool about the Aleph-Tav body, is it's a direct connection between the Father and His creation.
Amen. And
it's directly affected by our lifestyle and everything we do, because it's created by His words. And we're either living according to His words or contrary to His words, and then that affects how our physical body functions.
Yes, it does.
So it's just a slow learning process for people to learn all this information, and that's why I'm writing a book. And I think my main calling is going to be the Aleph-Tav body system and teaching that to people. I'm working on right now, we have, what you're doing is mainly 2 different or 3 applications of the Aleph-Tav body system, but I plan on having 7 of them when I'm complete.
Wow.
So right now you have the lifestyle, which is based on Torah. You have the frequency imprints that have the frequencies for all the control points the Aleph-Tav points and the pathways, and you're doing the hands-on, where it's just basically light touch where you're touching two of these points. So you're basically using your hands as jumper cables.
Right.
But there's going to be a lot more applications, hopefully sometime later this year when I'm done with the book. And then I'm going to start teaching people how to use this system and how it works, because it gets, it's like reading the scriptures.
Amen.
We could probably talk a couple hours on each one of the points.
Oh, yeah.
And how they relate to the letter and how they relate to your life and everything they relate to. And it's all completely consistent with everything he's created. So when you learn to read the body, it's like reading the scriptures. It's like he laid it all out on the body like a second witness or another prophecy. And you see the exact same principles in the scripture laid out on the body.
Well, I'm very excited with the book. I think that's going to be just a huge eye-opener to people. I am doing a lot of the stuff that Alphonso mentioned just here. I'm doing the hands-on. I do it at night before I go to bed. I try to do it in the morning, but sometimes But at nighttime, I've implemented the hands-on that are self-applicable. You can do them on your own. It takes like 5 minutes, even that. My husband and I also do the longer version that take about 45 minutes to an hour. And with anything in life, when you do this kind of lifestyle, it takes time. It's not something that happens overnight. Your conventional medicine, like he discussed with his health challenge before with colitis, medication, pop some pills in your mouth, put a Band-Aid on it, and move on your merry way. But the beauty of what Alphonso does as a naturopath doctor is that he gets to the root issue. And I'm going to even go deeper by saying he gets down to the spiritual root issue, I believe, of how the body is to function. And when you take care of the spirit within, your body, as they say in Hebrew, becomes ahad. It becomes one. It becomes balanced. It becomes organized. I mean, not that we're exempt from life's blows. I mean, we can tell you stories probably to no ends about things that have happened in our lives as believers, but we have a foundation based on the Messiah to know that no matter what we're going through in life, he is there. And the beauty about what Alphonso does is it's just amazing. We are seeing him currently. I am. Hopefully when I hit my plateau of health, I want to get my husband seeing Alphonso also. So that's going to be really cool. Okay, so you've got your book coming out here soon. We're very excited. I know that we'll be able to do a little bit more Shalom podcast here down the road when that kind of launches. And I would love to get into more detail with you, Alphonso, and get into more depth to have our listening audience, whether it's on Worship and Word Radio or on Healing Throughout Shalom Pod, to be able to really get really familiar with what you do. So with that being said, please give our listening audience some information about how to contact you, where to contact you. I know you're on Facebook. I know that you have your email. You're working with Balanced Life Clinic. You've got a whole bunch of different spokes in the hub, kind of ways of connecting. So blast away, my brother, and share with the people how they can go about getting a hold of you.
So, yes, I work at Balanced Life Clinic most of the time. That's probably the main clinic I work at. I do work at one other one called Brexville Physical Medicine. So, but the main way probably to get a hold of me is through Balance of Life Clinic, and they do have a website, balanceoflifeclinic.com. Another way is you could just contact me directly through my email, which is alphonzom3@gmail.com, and that's ALPHONZOM3@gmail.com. I think the number at the clinic is 330-764-4242. It's up to you if you want to go through the clinic and contact me, or if you just want to shoot me an email. Either way is great, and then we can get you the information on testing and consultations and all that stuff. But and yes, I am on Facebook, and it's pretty easy to find because I think I'm the only Alphonso Munzo III out there.
And also, too, just as a little side note, he's also on The Way, Torah-based evangelistic tool to share the good news of the Messiah.
Yeah, they did a fantastic job on that documentary. I did not know I was going to be in the documentary that much. They actually used a lot of the footage they shot, and basically I just told the story of how I came to that understanding.
Amen.
So yeah, if you have not seen that documentary, I would highly recommend it. I think the site is thewaydoc, like DOC.com.
Okay.
So I think it's thewaydoc, as in documentary.com.
Cool.
And you'll hear testimonies of all kinds of people and why they live the way they do from studying the scriptures. But yeah, I would agree. I don't think I could ever go back. I know I wouldn't. It's just just so rich, and you just start learning so much when you understand and study the scriptures from the Hebrew perspective. It just comes alive.
It does. Well, Alphonso, I thank you so kindly for your time. I appreciate you taking out the time on a Sunday to talk to Mama Bell here from Healing Throughout. Again, if you'd like to get a hold of Alphonso, you can check him out on Balance of Life Clinic. I believe they're on Facebook too. Alphonso Munzo III is on Facebook. We will make sure to put things on our podcast here, and we put on the internet for social media regarding information, how to get a hold of them so that you guys can see it while you're listening. And again, thank you so much, Alphonso, for coming. I really appreciate it. Is there anything else you'd like to say to our listening audience before we say we bid adieu here?
Just thanks again for having me on. It's been a great pleasure, and really appreciate it. And for everyone listening, shalom.
Shalom. Again, thank you for listening here. This is Mama Bell from Healing Throughout. You can check us on the website at healingthroughout.com. We have a podcast called Shalom Pod. And if you are local in the area and or a believer in the Messiah, please hook me up or send me a contact message about how we can share your story on Shalom Pod. I want to also thank my husband, Scott Bell, who's the engineer of Worship and Word Radio. Again, thank you, Alphonso. Thank you, everybody, for listening. This is Mama Bell signing off. Shalom, shalom.